Yo, what's going on guys? HyperX here, and today I'm back with another special video, a PC video no less, because we are once again checking out another one of MSI's gaming rigs. This time we are going to be putting it to the test with the age-old question of can it run Crysis? Because of course, last week Crysis Remastered launched and it quite literally has a setting in-game called Can It Run Crysis? Now obviously if you guys know Crysis, it was a notoriously difficult game to run, so it's kind of a harsh test to throw at a machine because, I mean, it's not supposed to be easy to run. But either way, MSI sent me their new PC to check out, so why not put it through its paces with this notoriously difficult game? Of course, I want to give a massive shout out to MSI for very kindly sponsoring this video and loaning me this PC. It is not mine to keep, sitting behind me. I get to keep it for the week and then it goes back, so sad face on that front. But alas, we're going to talk about the PC, talk about what is inside it, put it through its paces, and basically make a fun video of it. So I hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, a like would be super appreciated. For any of you wondering, this does not feature the 3000 series cards. That is of course a video for another time. This is much more on the 2000 series cards, but still, it's going to be an interesting test. Now, to begin with, starting off with the machine itself, that way you know what we are working with. The build itself is housed inside the MSI MPG Sakura 100R mid tower with some of that sweet tempered glass on the outside. You have your typical viewing window, but I also like how the bottom half of the front is also glass, so you can kind of take a little sneak peek at the fans, which are of course RGB'd up to the high heavens. Of course, outside of that, you also have your usual array of ports and connectivity options on both the top and the back. Pretty standard stuff, so not going to kind of focus on that too much. However, if we open up the side and take a look inside, then this all sits on the MSI MEG Z490 Unify motherboard. We have a 10th generation Intel i9 10900K processor, complete with the MSI MAG Core Liquid 360R CPU cooler. The GPU of choice in this build is the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 Super, which of course means we can mess around with all those ray tracing options. Although it is worth noting, Crysis probably isn't the best game to demonstrate ray tracing given its age and whatnot, and some of the options don't necessarily look that distinctive, but anyway, it still has the options. That aside, we've also got 16GB of RAM, a PCI M.2 solid state drive for storage, alongside a 1000 watt PSU. So that is a super quick rundown of the build itself. A very nice machine, incredibly nicely put together. Loving all the RGB lights, of course, and it just looks nice through that tempered glass window. However, that to one side, let's talk about the game. Now, before we dive into the tests themselves, it's important to set expectations here. Crysis, the reason it got a name for itself is because it has always been notoriously difficult or a beefy game to run in the past, taxing even some of the most powerful builds. And with the remaster out, they don't seem intent on changing that legacy. The game itself quite literally features a mode called Can It Run Crysis, which gives you unlimited view distances, no pop-ups of assets, no LOD changes anymore, nothing. So it's a pretty high demand. In fact, on that note, in 4K, from the test that many people and many kind of tech channels have run, it seems that there isn't currently a card capable of running the game in 4K in the Can It Run Crysis mode at anything beyond 30 FPS. So, I mean, it's a monster. However, today my focus is much more on 1440p and 1080p. I'm also playing this on the MSI Optix MAG 322 CQR monitor. It's a curved gaming monitor with 165Hz refresh rate, a 1 millisecond response time, FreeSync technology, and it also supports HDR. It's a really nice screen with a great viewing angle as well, but for the purposes of most of my gameplay in this video, we ran the game in 1440p, and I did drop down to 1080p to see the differences at certain times. To further add to this, it's also worth noting that other tests that have been run by notable tech channels state that even the 2080 Ti can struggle to run this game above 60 FPS on very high settings. So it's safe to say it's not exactly a friendly game to run tests with, which obviously makes it good for running tests, I guess. But here we are, doing it anyway. So, what did I start out with? Well, initially, the menu actually has an option to pick the best settings based on your system. So right off the bat, you can simply press the button, and for me, that put my settings at high, at 1440p, which isn't too bad. Playing the game, I averaged around 50 FPS, give or take, dropping a little bit below in hectic scenarios or bodies of water. Of course, in the interest of science, I did crank it all the way up to the Can It Run Crysis mode, and to no surprise at all, the game did struggle, running at around 30 FPS or below, sometimes peaking a little bit above, but safe to say, 1440p, Can It Run Crysis is a challenge, which again, I kind of expected. I did then drop the gameplay down to 1080p, at which point I was able to see predictably higher frame rates around the 70 FPS average, sometimes a little bit higher. However, if we switch back to 1440p, messing around with some of the ray tracing options, now back on high settings as recommended by the game, the only tweaking I did here is that I switched the ray tracing option to Can It Run Crysis, and with this on, I got very similar results to before. Meanwhile, when you turn ray tracing off, again, to no surprise, we saw a boost in frame rate. Of course, having the RTX series cards does open the opportunity for ray tracing on while gaming, but as mentioned, the differences in Crysis Remastered aren't quite as noticeable as they would be in other games. You play games like Battlefield or other things like that and you walk up to the side of cars and see reflections in them and things in puddles, and it is just incredibly obvious. Meanwhile in Crysis, some of the changes are much more subtle. And I mean, again, that's to be expected. It's an older game, so there's that to expect. But overall, the main thing to focus on here is the machine itself definitely is a beefy setup. It's of course a little unfair to throw something as harsh as Crysis at it, especially when, optimization wise it's not a perfect game to run. But when gaming at 1440p, I was getting a smooth kind of 50-ish frames, and while that is sub 60, so to a lot of people that might be like, well, that's not good enough, it's still made for a smooth overall experience. And then if you do tweak the settings a little bit further, turning off things that you don't really need, and again, as mentioned, if you turn off something like RTX, which honestly you're not getting a great deal of anyway, it's very much possible to get something much closer to the 100 frame mark. So there we have it. That's a rundown on the machine itself and how it runs Crysis. Again, massive shout out to MSI for very kindly sending it my way. Super appreciate that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Always fun to test out new tech and see how it runs different games. So if you enjoyed it, let me know down below. And of course, keep it locked for plenty more. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, you can join the HyperX Gaming Discord. We've got an awesome community over there with so many different channels for you to chat loads of different topics and different games. I'm in there, the team's in there if you guys want to chat with us, find people to play with. It's just in general a great place to be. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of our future uploads.